The silence in the restaurant was a living thing, a predator coiled in the gilded corners and crystal chandeliers of the Sovereign. It thickened the air, making each breath a deliberate act of defiance against the man who commanded it. He sat at the center of the room, a king on a velvet throne, his presence a vortex pulling all light and sound into itself. His name was whispered but never spoken, June. His enforcers, statues carved from shadow and steel, flanked him. The air crackled with the kind of tension that precedes a storm or a firing squad. He had been speaking in his native tongue, his voice a low, lethal murmur directed at the trembling restaurant owner, a man whose empire of cuisine was crumbling under a single, icy glare. June's words were a current no one in the room could navigate, a language that was both a weapon and a shield. He paused, a sliver of a smile playing on his lips as he surveyed the terror he had orchestrated. Then he spoke again, a sharp, dismissive question intended to be the final nail in the owner's coffin. And from the edge of the room, a voice, clear and calm as still water, answered him. He said he has 3 days, or he will burn this place to the ground with your family inside. The voice was melodic, yet it carried the precise, chilling weight of his threat. Every head turned, a synchronized motion of disbelief. The words had not come from one of his men. They had come from a waitress, a young black woman in a crisp white shirt and a stark red apron, a tray of empty glasses balanced perfectly on one hand. Her name tag read Amira. She hadn't flinched. She hadn't looked away. She met June's gaze across the sea of frozen patrons, her expression a mask of professional indifference that was more insulting than any open challenge. The silence shattered, replaced by a collective, indrawn breath. The predator in the room had just been looked in the eye by something it did not recognize, and it was intrigued. June's dark eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with a hunter's focus. The world fell away, leaving only the two of them suspended in that moment of impossible connection. His men shifted, hands moving instinctively towards hidden steel, but he lifted a single finger, a silent command that froze them in place. The restaurant owner had collapsed into his chair, a puppet with its strings cut. Amira remained standing, a pillar of calm in the hurricane of his making. "You speak my language," June stated, his own words now shifting to the polished, unaccented English of international business and bloodshed. It was not a question. It was an accusation. "I speak several," Amira replied, her voice still impossibly level. She placed the tray of glasses onto a nearby service station with a soft, deliberate clink that echoed like a gunshot in the heavy silence. "It's a useful skill in hospitality." A flicker of something, amusement, perhaps, or respect, danced in his gaze. He gestured to the chair opposite him, an invitation that was undeniably a command. "Sit." His men tensed again. No one sat at his table uninvited. Amira's eyes held his for a beat longer, a silent negotiation of power taking place in the space between them. She was weighing her options, he realized, not out of fear, but with the cold calculation of a strategist. Slowly, deliberately, she moved towards the table, her steps measured and sure. She did not look like a waitress walking to her execution. She looked like a queen approaching a rival monarch's throne. She sat, her back straight, her hands resting calmly in her lap, the red of her apron a splash of blood against the pristine white tablecloth. The interrogation had begun, not in a damp cellar with chains, but here, under the glittering chandeliers, with the entire room as their unwilling audience. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice a silken threat. Amira met his gaze without blinking. "I'm the one who understood you." The night bled into a tense, surreal tableau. June dismissed everyone else with a flick of his wrist, emptying the grand dining room until only he, Amira, and his two most trusted guards, including his grim-faced Lieutenant Day, remained. The opulence of the room felt like a cage. Rain began to lash against the tall, panoramic windows, each drop a tiny fist beating against the glass, mirroring the frantic pulse Amira refused to let show. "Where did you learn it?" June pressed, leaning forward, the the faint scent of expensive scotch and something metallic, like cold steel, drifting across the table. His posture was deceptively relaxed, but his eyes were dissecting her, searching for the tells of a liar, a spy, a ghost. "My father was a diplomat," she said, the lie smooth and well-rehearsed, a worn stone in her mouth. "We moved a lot. I picked things up. It was a plausible story, designed to be just interesting enough to satisfy curiosity without inviting deeper scrutiny." But June was not a man satisfied by surfaces. He was a man who excavated secrets for a living. His gaze flickered to her hands, noting the faint, silvery scars on her knuckles, the kind not earned by carrying trays. He saw the way she sat, perfectly balanced, her weight centered, ready to move in an instant. This was not a diplomat's daughter. This was a survivor. Suddenly, the world outside the windows erupted. The sharp crack of suppressed gunfire shattered the night, followed by the percussive pop of a window imploding somewhere in the lobby. Day and the other guard were instantly on their feet, weapons drawn, moving to flank June. "Kaido," Day snarled, his eyes scanning the darkness outside. The attack was swift, professional, and utterly unexpected. Glass shattered nearby as a bullet punched through the reinforced pane, embedding itself in the wall behind June's head. In the split second of chaos, as June's men moved to shield him, Amira moved faster. She didn't cower. She didn't scream. She kicked the heavy mahogany table with impossible force, sending it crashing onto its side, creating a solid barrier. "Down," she commanded, her voice cutting through the panic with the sharp edge of authority. She was already on the floor, pulling a small, wicked-looking knife from a hidden sheath on her ankle. June stared, momentarily stunned, not by the attack, but by her. The waitress was gone. In her place was a warrior. The ensuing firefight was a brutal, chaotic ballet of splintering wood and flying glass. Kaido's assassins were professionals, flooding the space with disciplined fire, pinning them behind the overturned table. June returned fire with a cold, terrifying efficiency, each shot a deliberate punctuation mark in the symphony of violence. Day was a bulwark of muscle and lead, laying down a suppressing barrage. But they were outnumbered, caught in a kill box. One of Kaido's men broke through a side door, his weapon swinging towards June's exposed flank. Before Day could pivot, Amira moved like smoke. She rose from her crouch, a blur of motion, the steak knife from the table setting now clutched in her hand. She didn't throw it. She closed the distance in 2 silent steps, her body a fluid line of deadly intent. The knife went under the man's guard, a quick, brutal thrust to the throat. He gurgled, a look of profound surprise on his face, and collapsed without a sound. She was back behind the table before his body hit the floor, the bloody knife discarded, her eyes already scanning for the next threat. The fight was over in less than a minute, the surviving attackers melting back into the rain-swept night. Silence descended again, thick with the smell of cordite and blood. Day stared at Amira, his weapon still raised, his expression a mixture of shock and suspicion. June, however, was looking at her with an entirely new kind of intensity. The intrigue had burned away, replaced by the stark, undeniable fire of recognition. He saw the ghost in her eyes. "A diplomat's daughter," he said, his voice a low, dangerous hum. He rose slowly, kicking a spent shell casing aside. He walked around the table and stopped in front of her, cornering her against the makeshift barricade. He was close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Try again." Amira finally let the mask of the waitress fall away completely. The weariness of a lifetime on the run settled into her features. "My name is not Amira," she said, her voice raw. "My name is Reina. And my father wasn't a diplomat. He was the head of the Serpent Syndicate in Chicago. The one your predecessor, Chairman Kong, wiped out 10 years ago. I was the only one who got out." The name hung in the air between them, a specter of a bygone war. The Serpent Syndicate. They had been legends, ghosts who controlled the city's arteries with silent, ruthless precision. June had only been a young captain under Chairman Kong when they were purged, a bloody, systematic erasure that had cemented Kang's power. And this woman, this girl, was its sole survivor. A princess of a fallen kingdom, hiding in plain sight as a waitress. "You're a long way from home, princess," June murmured, the title both a mockery and a mark of respect. He saw it all now. The scars, the language, the lethal grace. It was the pedigree of a dynasty forged in violence. "I'm not looking for a home," Reina corrected him, her chin lifting in defiance. "I'm looking for what Kong stole from my family before he killed them. A ledger. It details his network, his offshore accounts, his political assets, the foundation of his entire empire. The one you inherited." His eyes hardened. That ledger was the bedrock of his organization, the source of his untouchable power. For her to know of it meant she was infinitely more dangerous than he had imagined. Day took a step forward. "She's a threat. We should eliminate her." "No," June said, his gaze locked on Reina. A slow, predatory smile touched his lips. "She's an asset." He saw the path forward with sudden, startling clarity. Kaido's attack tonight was no coincidence. His rivals were circling, sensing a weakness they hadn't dared to before. Information was leaking. There was a traitor in his ranks. And this ghost from the past, this vengeful princess, might just be the key to finding them. "You want her ledger," he stated. "I want the rat in my house who gave Kaido my location tonight. We have a temporary alignment of interests." Reina's eyes narrowed. An alliance with the devil who inherited her family's blood-soaked throne. The irony was bitter. But he was right. Alone, she was a hunter with no resources. With him, she had access to the heart of the beast. "What are your terms?" she asked, her voice pure business. "My terms are simple," June replied, leaning in closer, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper. "You work with me. You live in my house, under my protection, until we find the traitor. You will be my shadow. And, in return, I will help you find what you're looking for. But understand this, Reina. You are a ghost in my world now. And ghosts do as they are told." The following days were a crucible. Reina was moved into June's penthouse, a sterile fortress of glass and chrome overlooking the city's glittering sprawl. It was a gilded cage, and June was its ever-present warden. They circled each other constantly, two predators forced into the same territory, the air thick with unspoken threats and a volatile, magnetic pull. They worked relentlessly, cross-referencing security logs, communication records, and financial transfers. Reina's mind was as sharp as the knives she favored, seeing patterns in the data that June's men had missed. She pointed out a discrepancy in the accounts managed by Min, June's quiet, unassuming logistics chief. A series of untraceable payments, small at first, but escalating, all coinciding with recent security breaches. "It's him," Reina said, her finger tracing the digital trail on a tablet screen. "Min has been with me for 15 years, June countered, his voice tight with disbelief. "He was with Kong before me. Loyalty is all he has." "Loyalty can be bought," she retorted, looking up at him. "Or it can be a lie you've been told for so long you believe it's the truth." The betrayal was a poison seeping into the foundations of June's world. Min was more than an employee. He was a fixture, a piece of the architecture June had thought immutable. To accept Reina's logic was to accept that his judgment had been fatally flawed. He set a trap. A piece of false information about a major weapons shipment was leaked through a channel only Min had access to. They waited in a darkened warehouse on the industrial waterfront, the smell of rust and brine hanging in the cold air. Reina stood beside June in the shadows of a mezzanine, both of them clad in dark, tactical gear. She watched him, saw the muscle twitching in his jaw. This was personal. The bait was taken. Min arrived, but he wasn't alone. Kaido was with him, along with a dozen of his best men. It wasn't a meeting. It was an ambush. The trap had been turned on them. "You were right," June breathed, his voice a low growl as the warehouse doors slammed shut, plunging them into near darkness before emergency lights flickered on, casting long, distorted shadows. "I hate it when you're right." Reina gave him a grim smile, pulling a handgun from her holster. "Get used to it." The warehouse erupted into a maelstrom of violence. Kaido's men swarmed from all sides, their weapons spitting fire in the dim, cavernous space. June and Reina were back to back, a whirlwind of deadly precision in the center of the storm. He fought with the brutal economy of a seasoned king, each movement designed for maximum lethality. She moved like a phantom, fluid and unpredictable, her smaller frame an advantage as she weaved through the chaos, her shots finding their marks with chilling accuracy. They didn't speak, communicating through the shared rhythm of combat, a deadly dance they both knew by heart. Reina saw Min near the back, trying to slip away while his new master fought his war. Rage, cold and pure, flooded her. This was the face of betrayal, the kind that had orphaned her and set her on this path. She broke from June, sprinting across the floor, ignoring the bullets that zipped past her head. She tackled Min, sending them both crashing into a stack of wooden crates. He was stronger, but she was faster, more vicious. She drove an elbow into his face, stunning him, and got her knife to his throat. "Why?" she snarled, the blade pressing into his skin. Min's eyes were wide with terror and a strange, pathetic resignation. "He offered me a way out. A life away from this." He gestured wildly at the carnage. "June is a monster, just like Kong was." Just then, Kaido himself appeared, his own weapon leveled at Reina's head. "Let him go, little ghost," June's voice cut through the noise. "Kaido." He stood 20 feet away, his gun aimed not at Kaido, but at a network of chains holding a massive cargo container suspended from the ceiling directly above Kaido and his remaining men. "Drop it. Or I drop this." Kaido hesitated, a snarl on his face. In that moment of indecision, Reina made her choice. She didn't kill Min. She slammed the hilt of her knife against his temple, knocking him unconscious, then rolled away. "Now," she screamed at June. He fired. The chain snapped, and tons of steel plunged downwards with a deafening groan. Kaido and his men scattered, but not all of them were fast enough. The warehouse shook with the impact. And then, silence. In the ringing aftermath, surrounded by smoke, dust, and the dead, they stood in the center of the wreckage. The immediate threat was gone, but the emotional fallout was just beginning to settle. Adrenaline gave way to a profound, shared exhaustion. Rain hammered on the tin roof of the warehouse, a relentless, mournful drumbeat. Reina was tending to a deep gash on June's arm, her touch surprisingly gentle as she tied a makeshift bandage. His blood was dark on her hands. He watched her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. The carefully constructed walls he had built around himself for years were crumbling, eroded by the storm that was this woman. "He was like a father to me," June said, his voice quiet, stripped of its usual authority, revealing the raw wound of Min's betrayal. "Kong found me on the streets. He gave me a purpose. Min taught me how to navigate this world, how to survive Kang's moods. I thought he was the one person I could trust." Reina finished tying the knot and looked up, her eyes meeting his. She saw past the king, past the Mafia boss, and saw the orphaned boy he had been, a reflection of her own past. "Trust is a luxury people like us can't afford," she whispered, her own voice thick with memory. "The day my family died, it was my father's most trusted advisor who opened the gates for Kang's men. He smiled at me as they dragged my father into the street. A tear she hadn't realized she was holding back traced a clean path through the grime on her cheek." June reached up, his uninjured hand cupping her face, his thumb gently wiping the tear away. His touch was electric, a jolt of heat in the cold, damp air. The space between them vanished, charged with years of shared pain, loss, and a fierce, undeniable connection forged in blood and fire. He leaned in, and she met him halfway, a desperate, hungry kiss that was not about romance, but about recognition. It was a raw, bruising confession of two broken souls finding their missing piece in the heart of the wreckage. It was the eye of the storm, a moment of fragile peace before the final battle. The interrogation of Min yielded everything. Beaten and broken, he gave them Kaido's entire operational structure, his primary stronghold, and the details of a planned hostile takeover of the city's port authority, the final piece he needed to truly challenge June's reign. He also confirmed the location of Reina's ledger. Kaido had been keeping it as a trophy, a symbol of his ambition to surpass the legends of the old world. It was all stored in a fortified penthouse suite atop the Eclipse Tower, a skyscraper that scraped the clouds, a modern-day fortress. This was their chance to end it all in one decisive strike. For the next 48 hours, they barely slept. They moved from June's penthouse to a discreet tactical base, a place of cold concrete and humming servers. Here, June was not a king, but a general, and Reina was not his captive, but his chief strategist. She stood before a massive digital map of the Eclipse Tower, her mind seeing vulnerabilities where his men saw impenetrable defenses. His security is built for a frontal assault, she explained, pointing to a series of access points. He expects you to come through the lobby or the roof. He won't be watching the service levels or the window washing mechanics. Her plan was audacious, a multi-pronged infiltration that relied on precision, timing, and misdirection. Day and a small team would create a loud, visible diversion at the front entrance, drawing the bulk of Kaido's forces down. A second team would breach via the roof, but only as a secondary feint. The real attack, led by June and Reina themselves, would come from the side, ascending the building's exterior on a mechanical rig before blasting their way in just 2 floors below Kaido's penthouse. It's insane, Day admitted, studying the plans. Which is why it will work. June finished, a look of grim admiration on his face as he watched Reina. He saw the queen she was born to be, her intelligence a far more lethal weapon than any gun. He was no longer just using her, he was trusting her. The dynamic had shifted from warden and prisoner to partners, 2 sovereigns planning the reclamation of their kingdoms. Their hands brushed as they both reached for a printed schematic, and the brief contact was a silent promise, a current of shared purpose that was more intimate than their kiss in the warehouse. The storm was coming, and this time, they would be the ones to unleash it. The assault on the Eclipse Tower began under the cloak of a moonless, rain-lashed night. The city below was a galaxy of blurred lights as the maintenance rig ascended the sheer glass face of the building, the wind howling around them. Reina and June stood side by side, silent and focused, the fate of their world hanging on the next hour. The diversion began precisely on schedule. Distant explosions and the chatter of automatic gunfire echoed from the ground floor, a symphony of chaos conducted by Day. As planned, security feeds showed Kaido's forces converging on the lobby. Now, June commanded into his comms. A shaped charge blew a perfect circle out of the reinforced window, and they poured into the silent, empty office floor. The final ascent to the penthouse was a tense, bloody affair. They moved through stairwells and corridors, eliminating the skeleton crew Kaido had left behind with brutal efficiency. They were a seamless unit, anticipating each other's movements, covering each other's backs. They reached the penthouse doors just as Kaido, realizing the true nature of the attack, was trying to rally his personal guard. They didn't give him the chance. June kicked the doors in, and they entered the opulent suite in a storm of controlled violence. Kaido stood there, a look of pure fury on his face, a golden-plated pistol in his hand. But his fight was already lost. Reina's tactical brilliance had dismantled his defenses from the inside out. The ensuing fight was short and personal. While his men engaged the guards, June advanced on Kaido. It wasn't a firefight. It was an execution. 2 shots, precise and final. As Kaido fell, his reign of terror ending on a plush white carpet, Reina was already moving towards a large, ornate safe built into the wall. She entered a complex code from memory, one her father had taught her as a child. The heavy door swung open. Inside, nestled amongst stacks of bearer bonds and jewels, was a simple, leather-bound book. The Serpent's Ledger. Her birthright. She took it, her hands trembling slightly. It was over. The ghost could finally rest. Or, perhaps, the queen could finally rise. 6 months later, the city had settled under its new, unified leadership. The underworld breathed with a different rhythm, one of disciplined power rather than chaotic ambition. The name whispered in the shadows was no longer just June's. It was theirs. The penthouse at the top of the Eclipse Tower, once Kaido's gaudy monument to hubris, had been stripped and remade. It was now a throne room of minimalist elegance, a place of dark wood, black leather, and sprawling views of the kingdom they now commanded. June stood by the vast window, looking down at the city lights, a glass of scotch in his hand. He heard her approach, the soft sound of her bare feet on the polished floor. Reina, she used her real name now, came to stand beside him. She was no longer wearing a waitress's apron or tactical gear. She was in a simple, elegant black dress that spoke of power and grace. She had taken the ledger and, instead of disappearing, had used its secrets to help June consolidate his power, purging the rot within his organization and forging new, unbreakable alliances. She had rebuilt her father's empire not on its old foundations, but as a pillar supporting a new one. "The council has agreed to your terms," she said, her voice calm and assured. "The port is ours," he turned to her, a rare, genuine smile on his face. He had offered her a way out, a new identity and endless wealth to disappear anywhere in the world. She had refused. "I'm not a ghost anymore," she had told him. "And I'm done running." He gestured towards the large, throne-like chair that sat in the center of the room, his traditional seat of power. "I believe you have a meeting to preside over." Reina looked at the chair, then back at him. It was the ultimate symbol of dominance in their world, the seat he had never let anyone else touch. She walked to it and sat, not with hesitation, but with the innate confidence of a woman who knew her worth and had earned her place. He remained by the window, watching her, his king's guard to her queen. The power hadn't just been shared, it had been reforged, creating something stronger than either of them had been alone. She had walked into his world as a waitress, a ghost. Now she ruled it. Who do you think truly holds the power in a partnership like theirs? The one who built the throne, or the one who proved worthy of sitting in it? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more tales from the shadows.